Welcome and thank you for standing by. Currently, all participants in our listen-only mode. Today's webinar is being recorded and the recording will be posted publicly. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. Now I'd like to turn the call over to your host, Deb Rivera.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are listening from. Welcome. We are very happy to have you all joining us today. My name is Deb Rivera, and I will be the host for today's webinar, Exploring Economic Data on data.census.gov. And today we will learn all about economic data that is available on the data search platform, data.census.gov, and how you can access it. So for this webinar event, I am joined by some of my colleagues, and together we will be providing support to our speaker by monitoring the chat, sending you any helpful links that we have, and also answering as many questions as we can throughout the webinar. We are encouraging participants to use the Q&A panel in WebEx to submit questions, and use the chat if you want to look or find any links or helpful information that we're sharing. So we will have a live Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. We are allowing one question per participant, and if you would like to ask another question, you're welcome to queue up again. Participants who would like to ask a question are welcome to use the raise hand icon, and that appears right next to your name in WebEx. That will prompt us to open up your line, and then you'll be able to unmute yourself and ask us your question. Please note that the question and answer session today will focus on the platform, data.census.gov. We will not be able to go in depth to address any questions related to 2020 census products or data. As always, we are recording the webinar today, and all of the materials for this training will be available through the Census Academy website, and we will be sending that link through the chat. Thank you all so much for joining us, and now I would like to turn things over to our presenter, Tyson Weister. Thank you, Tyson.
Great, thank you, Deb, and thank you all for joining the webinar, Exploring Economic Data on data.census.gov. My name's Tyson Weister. I work on the communications team for the platform, data.census.gov. We are going to focus today on accessing the economic data on our website. So specifically, what this is going to look like is primarily a live demonstration where we're going to be flipping back and forth between the site, and we'll have some tips and tricks sprinkled in throughout. Towards the end, we'll wrap up with some resources for learning more, and then open it up for your questions. Now, before we get into that live demonstration, I did want to paint a picture to make sure we're clear on what type of data and data sets are available on data.census.gov for economic and business data. So to take this a step back, the Census Bureau collects data for over 130 different surveys and programs. A subset of those are data for businesses and economic data. Now, we don't have every economic and business data set on data.census.gov, but we do have some of the most popular ones. What I've done here on this slide is listed out the data sets that are available on the left-hand side for economic and business data. I've also included the vintages. So some of these popular data sets that we are going to be introducing you to today and using in some of our examples include the economic census, county business patterns, non-employer statistics, annual survey of manufacturers, and annual business survey. There are others as well. If you'd like to look at the full list of data sets that we do have available on data.census.gov, we encourage you to visit the link on the right. But again, today we're going to focus on economic and business data. As a note, we do have these data sets on our site back to 2012. Now, for today's webinar, you're not going to walk out of the webinar being an expert in the different types of economic data, but what you are going to be focusing on today is how to go about accessing these tables on data.census.gov. So the strategies that we're going to be talking about today apply across data sets. Specifically, what we want you to walk out with is being able to access the business data on our site using the single search and the advanced search functionality. In the advanced search filters, we're going to focus specifically on NAICS codes, North American Industry Classification System codes, and how to select economic data sets. You'll also learn how to read the table layout and customize the table view. Many economic data tables are quite large, so it's helpful to pay close attention to the rows and columns in the table, and we have features on our site to help narrow down to the exact data you're looking for. We'll also show you how to create a map to visualize the data and save your results. So these 5 bullet points that we're going to be talking about today apply generally across all the economic data tables and maps that we have on our site. With that in mind, I think we're ready to move forward with our live demonstration. For today, there are, wanting to make sure that you all are aware, there are 2 ways to go about searching on data.census.gov. One is the single search bar. That's what we're going to start with in our first example. And what works great in the single search bar are keywords. So topics, geographies, year, table ID, or codes such as NAICS industry codes. For that first example, I'm going to walk through 2 quick searches, one for grocery store sales, and the second is for NAICS 4451 in Texas, and to show you the industry profile. So let's show you how to get started accessing some of this business data. Here I'm going to navigate to data.census.gov and press enter. We do recommend using Google Chrome or Edge for the best speed and performance. Once you get here on the landing page, you'll see right in the middle is the single search bar. I'm going to click into the single search bar and type my keyword, grocery store sales, and press enter. Do keep in mind when you type text in the single search bar, we at the Census Bureau in the design of this site are making our one best guess for what we think you mean. So I always recommend take a look in the upper left. It's going to tell you how the site interpreted your text. In this case, we see a topic filter for sales, shipments, and production. And we see a second filter for NAICS code 4451, grocery stores. So in this case, the text we typed in matches well with the filters that were returned back to us. For the purposes of today's webinar, we're going to spend most of our time looking at tables and maps. So after you get to the all results page, you'll want to choose one of those. Here, I'm going to click tables at the top. And I'm going to take a brief moment to look at the first table result. If you're not sure where to start, looking at that first result is usually a good starting place for you. We have pulled tables that are most relevant, and you'll typically see, in this case, there's 78 table results. The tables that appear near the top of this list have the most recent data. So here I'm just going to browse the table. In this case, it's a smaller table. There is just one geography. We didn't specify a geography in our search, so we're getting data for the United States for NAICS code 4451, which means grocery stores. It's providing data for all establishments for the year 2017. And then we see the number of firms, number of establishments, sales, and annual payroll, first quarter payroll, and number of employees. We're going to take a deeper dive into the table and how to read them later on, but just wanted to show you in general how you can click the table on the left-hand side, view the table data on the right. Now, a couple other tips and tricks as you're looking at these list of 78 table results. On the left-hand side, you'll see the source that the data are coming from. In this case, it says economic census, and more detailed information below. So in this case, 2017 economic census data set that's called Core Statistics Summary, Statistics for the US, States, and Selected Geographies 2017. The table title and table ID is EC 1700 Basic, and the table title is listed beside the table ID. So what you can do for this list of results is scroll through. You'll see the first 10 table results on the left to start. Notice that they do come from different surveys and programs. You see it starts to go to economic surveys. So you'll see in this list of results, economic census, annual business survey, non-employer statistics, economic census of island areas, you can page through the different tables. Or if you'd like to show more than 10 at a time, there are these buttons located conveniently for you at the top of this list in order to increase how many you can see at any one time. And as you're working through, you can click a table title on the left and view the data on the right-hand side of your screen. So with that, I want to move on to my next example here. This is just kind of showing you how to get started and how to browse your table results. I'm going to click the US Census logo in the upper left to show you an alternative types of text you can type in the single search bar. So in this case, I wanted to show you the industry profile for industry code 4451 in Texas. So I'm going to go ahead and type that exactly, 4451 Texas. That is the NAICS code and geography, and press enter. So this is to show you, again, you'll want to look in the upper left. We got the geography filter for Texas and the NAICS code filter for 4451 grocery stores. So you can type in those keywords for the NAICS, and sometimes it will generate a match for what you're looking for. You can also try the code itself. For this example, I wanted to showcase one of our premier products. It's our profiles on data.census.gov, and we've created industry profiles that provide you some high-level information in regards to this search criteria. So these profiles are available for NAICS industry codes when you have a single code and a single geography. On the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that profile map in a link that says View Profile. Here, I'm going to click that link. You'll see some highlighted data at the top. In this case, we're seeing that for industry code 4451 grocery stores in Texas, there are 6,600 establishments with paid employees, and that's coming from county business patterns. As you scroll down, you'll see other highlighted data. And sometimes you'll also get this information in a visual format. So as an example, in the small business section, for context, it's giving you that same number for Texas, total number of establishments with paid employees for Texas compared to the United States. And then the bar chart that you see below is for Texas grocery stores with paid employees, showing you how many establishments there are in categories of the number of employees that those establishments have. So what, less than 5 employees, 5 to 9, 10 to 19, etc. So just another way for you to take a dive into some of the high-level data. If you're not sure where to start, we hope you find these industry profiles helpful. The last thing I wanted to mention before we move on is that the profiles do include clickable links to the source tables. So if I wanted more information about this particular topic, I can click CB 2000 CBP. That's the table ID, and it's going to take me to that source table. Notice that my geography selection is still included here in the left column. And as I scroll to the right, you're seeing this is the same source data that was feeding the bar chart we saw in the previous view, but also with additional information throughout the table that was just a click away. We are going to take a deeper dive into this table layout in our next example, but I want to show you some additional information and ways to go about searching. So before we start looking at the table layout in detail, wanted to mention there is another way for you to search on our site, and that is the advanced search filters. So I love the advanced search because it's a guided approach. I don't have to come up with my own keywords to describe what I'm intending. You can click through the options, mark a checkbox as a final search selection, and that's just a more precise way for you to select your criteria. The advanced search also gives you options for all available search criteria, including the detailed codes. Now, before we run that advanced search, just want to take a moment to spell out more detail what the layout of these economic data tables look like. They can often be very large, especially when you start selecting some geographies and some different NAICS codes. They can be a number of data rows. When you're looking at the columns of the table, you'll want to pay attention to whether you're looking at data variables or non-key dimensions. So we're going to start out with describing what data variables are for you. They're the primary data value for your table. You'll tend to see them in the columns on the right-hand side of your table, and you'll notice that they're right aligned, the column headers as well as the data values. So if you're getting right aligned, that means it's a data variable. They may be numerical values or they may be categorical flags. Just look to whether they're right or left aligned. On the other side, there are things that we call non-key dimensions in economic data tables. So these are always left aligned, they're categorical variables. And the important thing that I want you to get out of this is that each unique combination of these non-key dimensions is resulting in a data row for your table. So here you can see we get data for Anderson County across the single NAICS code, and there's multiple rows depending on whether we're looking at all establishments, establishments with less than 5 employees, 5 to 9, etc. There are ways on data.census.gov for you to narrow this large table down to the exact data that you're most interested in looking at for your analysis, and you can remove all of that additional detail from your view. So that's what we're going to be working towards in this example, is familiarizing ourselves with the layout and taking advantage of those features that we have on our site. For this example, I'm going to select one NAICS code, NAICS 62 for the healthcare and social assistance. And we're going to look at this across multiple geographies, all counties in Tennessee, and I'm going to pull it from the county business patterns. So going back to the site, I'm going to click the US Census Bureau logo in the upper left. That's always going to start us fresh from the landing page. And this time I wanted to show you the advanced search. So I'm going to click the link under the single search bar. On the left-hand side, you'll see these filter categories. You want to start out with whatever's most important to you. And in many cases for economic and business data tables, you may want to specify your NAICS code first. So we're going to do that by clicking codes on the left. Then I'm going to choose the folder for industry codes, NAICS. And what we're looking for is one or more checkboxes as final search selections. So folders give us more detailed options. Checkboxes are final selections. And scrolling down, we'll see 6.2 healthcare and social assistance. I'm going to click the folder. And then I get a variety of options to choose from. Here, I'm going to go ahead and click the checkbox 6.2 healthcare and social assistance. Remember, you do need to click the checkbox in order to get that selection to appear in the upper left as a filter. So for our purposes, we're really done, but just for your information, you can browse through these folders, even if you're not familiar with which NAICS number you need. The descriptions and categories are here for you, so I find it helpful to browse what's available. You can click selections as you're going through, and if you need to delete a selection, on the left-hand side, you'll see an X and you can remove a filter selection. For this example, we're going to keep it high level and look at all summary data for healthcare and social assistance businesses. Next, I'm going to select my geography, all counties in Tennessee. Here I'll click geography on the left. Now at the Census Bureau, we have data for over 200 different levels of geography. That can be overwhelming. Most of those are only compatible with 2020 decennial census data, and many are compatible with American Community Survey data. A handful of those levels of geographies are compatible with our economic data. So if you're not sure which ones are compatible with economic data, a tip on our site, if you click the Summary Levels tab, what the site's doing for you is removing all of those geographic options that are not compatible with economic data and just leaving you this little selection. So it just helps narrow down your options to make sure you're going down the right pathway. In this case, we wanted county. I'm going to choose 050 state county. And then from here, we just follow our prompts. We'll go down to Tennessee. And then scrolling back up to the top, I'm going to click the checkbox, all counties within Tennessee. Now the last search criteria, I'm going to specify the survey, county business patterns on the left-hand side. We'll click surveys. This is not required, but if you do know your survey and program you're interested in, it can help narrow down the list. So rather than 78 tables, we're getting a smaller amount of table results. Do notice it flashed briefly with all possible options, then narrowed down to the 2 folders that are compatible with the search criteria we've already selected. Business patterns is an economic survey, so I'm going to click the economic surveys folder. Then I see a folder for business patterns and a checkbox for our particular survey, county business patterns. So you can use this process to select whatever search criteria you're interested in. For my purposes, I have one NAICS code, one geography selection for all counties in Tennessee, and my data set, county business patterns. Once you're happy with your search criteria in the upper left, go ahead and look for the search button in the lower right. And once again, we're going to look at tables first. So I'm going to click tables at the top. Now, one thing I want to mention, the most recent data does appear towards the top of your list. So we're looking at data from the 2020 vintage of county business patterns. The table IDs also have information that identifies what you're looking at. So CB means county business patterns. You'll see EC for economic census, IA for island area, NS for non-employer statistics. So that is meaningful information. And then the next 2 characters is the end year of the data set. So 20 in reference to 2020, 19 in reference to 2019, etc. You don't have to know that information, but in case these characters appear random to you, the first 4 are pretty useful. For our purpose, we want to take a deeper dive into the table. So one thing I also wanted to point out, these 2 panels, the filter and results panel, are expandable and collapsible as you want and need them. So you can simply click the button on the left side of your screen when you want to either access them or when you want to devote more space on your screen to your table view. Now, first, we're going to take a quick look. On the left side, we see this is a pretty large table. There's multiple rows for our geography, 511 data rows in this table. And remember, all of these left-aligned columns from geographic area name all the way through year is left-aligned as well. Those are our non-key dimensions. So every unique combination will result in a data row for the table. And for that particular context of information on the right-hand side, this particular table from county business patterns will tell you for that given set of criteria, what was the number of establishments, annual payroll, first quarter payroll, and number of employees. So the last thing I wanted to show you is how to narrow this down to only the data you're interested in. So for my purposes, I don't care about looking at this data across businesses broken out by number of employees. I just want the high level total. What you can do in this situation is filter, apply a custom filter, and what you'll do is hover over the column that you want to apply this to, and you'll see 3 horizontal bars. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more to make sure you all can see. As I go through this step, we'll click the 3 horizontal bars. Then you'll look and click the filter funnel icon. And because this is a categorical variable that's a non-key dimension, it gives you checkboxes. So you can just leave the checkboxes selected for what you want to keep. One thing I find helpful is to use the select all button. I'm actually going to click it twice. That's going to clear every possible selection out. Then I'm just going to click the checkbox for all establishments to keep the one that I want. And then you do need to make sure to click the apply button in order for this to apply to the table. We're going to walk through this one more time in our next example, and there's multiple ways you can go about doing it, but as long as you're left with the checkbox you want to keep and then you click apply, it will function for what you need. Do notice that once I click the apply button, it is going to decrease the data rows in my table. So rather than 500 rows, we're going to be left with, looks like 95 data rows corresponding to each county in Tennessee. Next thing, you can also use the site to apply filters for these data variables as well. So I'm going to look at number of establishments and first apply a filter to only keep data when a certain criteria is met. So when there's more 50 or more healthcare and social assistance establishments is what I'm going to apply. Click the 3 horizontal bars, and just like before, we'll click the filter icon. But because this is numerical value, we get a drop-down menu to choose from. So I want greater than or equals, and then I'm going to type in 50. And notice that when I did that, here I'm going to delete it, we go from our 95 data rows to only 50 data rows. So the 50 counties in Tennessee that have 50 or more healthcare and social assistance establishments with paid employees. Once you're done with that, you can just click outside of the box. It's automatically been applied. Last thing that I wanted to show in this column is you can also click any of the column to sort the data in ascending or descending order. So we have this sorted table. We can see the highest county in Tennessee is 2,216 establishments in NAICS 62, but we lose context as you scroll right and left. Notice that we lose our geography labels. You can pick any column or columns in this table and pin it in view. So if you hover over the column, click the 3 horizontal bars, and then click out of the filter icon back to the 3 horizontal bars, you'll see this pin column option. So you can hover, pin that column to the left or to the right of your screen, and that allows that label to stay in view as you scroll right and left, allowing you to make sense of the data you're looking at. Again, we're going to practice some of those same strategies in example number 3, but before we get there, I wanted to show you the maps. Data variables and non-key dimensions are available to you in maps. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail for the purposes of this discussion, but your data variable will happen to be the first drop-down menu. It's the values that you're creating the map for. And once you get to the maps below that first drop-down menu are going to be drop-down menus that let you specify the non-key dimensions or the context for what you're creating that map for. Things like your NAICS code, your year, etc. The important thing is just to make sure that you're carefully paying attention once you click the variables button for your map into all the drop-down menus. So let's see this in action. We're going to go ahead and map out the number of establishments across all counties in Tennessee so we can see the same information from our table, but visually in a map format that's probably going to be easier to digest for us. All of the tables on our site are mapped based, or excuse me, all the maps on our table, all the maps on our site are table based. So that means you can map any value you see in our table. You just have to make sure that you're clicked into the table that contains the data you want to map out. There's a few different ways to get to the maps. I use the tab at the top that says Maps. From here, you'll want to do a couple of steps. First, on the left-hand side, make sure you're clicked into the table that contains the data you want to map out. Here we can see we are with the orange bar. You'll also want to look at the boundaries, that it's set to the level you're interested in, the county level, and we've already selected all counties in Tennessee, so it's starting to create a map for us. The only thing is that we have to tell the site out of all of the values in the table, which one do we want shown on our map across the geography. So it's pretty simple to do. You just need to know to click the variables button in the upper left and then look at the drop-down menu. So right now, by default, it's mapping out number of employees. I wanted to map out number of establishments. So I'm going to click the first drop-down menu, choose the data variable, number of establishments, and then we'll want to review all of the remaining drop-down menus for our context. So notice it's mapping the data for 2017 NAICS code 00. I wanted the data for 62 healthcare establishments. So this is showing us number of establishments across all businesses, regardless of their NAICS code. Once you click into the drop-down menu, you'll get a long list of every possible NAICS code you could create this map for. You can narrow it down pretty easily by clicking into the search box and type in an exact text match for what you're looking at. So I'm going to type in healthcare. It's pulling up every NAICS option that contains the phrase healthcare, and the one we want is conveniently located in this short list. So 6.2 healthcare and social assistance. Everything else looks like we're set for what we wanted. It's giving us all establishments in all establishments. So we're getting the total and we're getting it for data year 2020. Once you're ready to go ahead and view your map, you can click the variables button again. And this is showing us here that counties in darker shades of blue have higher number of establishments for NAICS code 62, healthcare and social assistance. So residents that live in these areas probably have, less distance to drive to get to those businesses. You can also scroll in and start to see more labels populate on your map. You can click an individual county and see the value. So in Davidson County, Tennessee, there are 2,149 establishments in NAICS code 62 with paid employees. All right, before we move on to our next example, all of the data we've shown you so far, economic census, county business patterns, is covering businesses with paid employees. We do have a data set on our site called non-employer statistics that you can access using the survey filter, similar to how we selected the survey filter for business patterns and county business patterns. You would choose the non-employer statistics option. This table would give you information on the number of establishments and sales for these non-employer businesses. So this is primarily businesses for people who are self-employed and other non-employer businesses. If you think about in terms of the United States, there are more like self-employed and non-employer businesses than there are businesses with paid employees, but the total number of sales in proportion is much less for those businesses. So this may or may not be relevant to your particular analysis, but we did want to point out if you want a complete picture of businesses in your area, you would want to combine the data with county business patterns or economic census with the non-employer statistics data. All right, moving on to our third example, wanted to show you again using the filters, but in this instance, we're going to select, rather than one NAICS and multiple geographies, we're going to select one geography and multiple NAICS codes. For this example, I'm going to take a deeper dive into the manufacturing data that we have on our site. We're going to pull up data for all manufacturing NAICS codes at the 2 through 6 digit level in Texas. So going back to the site, we'll click the US Census logo in the upper left. And here I'm going to click the advanced search link. Just like before, on the left-hand side, I'll click codes, industry codes, NAICS. We see a folder, 31-33, manufacturing. And then we see several options to select. I'm going to choose the first checkboxes. So 31-33, the 2-digit NAICS code for manufacturing. And then there are convenient options at the top that allow you to select all 3, 4, 5, and 6-digit NAICS codes within the manufacturing. Once we have that, we'll go ahead and make our selection for Texas. On the left, choose geography. Next, I'll click state. And then we'll look for the checkbox for Texas. Once we are happy with our search criteria, we have those NAICS industry codes and Texas. We'll click search in the lower right. And then tables at the top. So in this case, we didn't select a topic or a data set, so we're getting 131 table results. I'm going to take a moment to browse the first result. Notice it comes from Economic Survey, Annual Survey of Manufacturers. Table is AM 1831 Basic 01. Just like before, we always want to take a moment to visually look at the layout of the table. So on the left of the table is where we tend to see those left aligned columns, where unique combination results in data rows. There's 432 data rows for this table, and we see it's providing our geography, our NAICS, both the number and the label for the NAICS, as well as year 2018, 19, 20, and 21 data. As we scroll to the right, you'll see all of the data values that are provided for that unique combination. So for this analysis, I'm going to click the 3 horizontal bars at the top of year, and I'm just interested in the most recent data rather than looking at this across time. So clicking the 3 horizontal bars and the filter icon, you can keep just the 1 year you want to remain in view, and then make sure to click the apply button. This is similar to what we did in the previous example. Once we click apply, it's going to decrease from 432 rows. And it's working. It's going to be 108 rows. So what we're finding now is that we've narrowed down this table to exactly what we want and need. We're getting 1 data row. We're getting all of the NAICS codes for manufacturing from 2-digit all the way to 6-digit. And then we can scroll to the right to see the data in the table. Now, in this case, you may find it more beneficial to pin the NAICS columns to your left rather than the geography to keep that context in view as you're scrolling right and left. So here I'm hovering over those 3 horizontal bars, hovering over pin column, and choosing pin left. And with that, as we scroll to the right of the table now, we're getting the full context of what is available. Now, this particular table is quite large. If you notice the scroll on right to left, there is a lot of information. It provides information for inputs and outputs and operating status of manufacturing businesses. So things like costs of utility, employee payroll, benefits, materials, advertising, waste removal, lots of great information all related to input and output. And for our purpose, I just wanted to take a moment to focus here on the value added column. So we would read this first row as an example. Notice it's providing the data in thousands that there were 272 billion $139,725,000 in value added through the manufacturing businesses. And as we scroll down, we get this across all those different NAICS codes. Now that we've got to the table that contains data we're interested in, I did want to show you a couple ways that you can save your results. One is the Excel button. This is going to give you a readable file. And the other thing I wanted to point out before I get to Excel, notice as we scroll right to left, you may have seen me doing it. You can hover your cursor in between the different columns and drag it right and left in order to see the full label for the data. Now, this particular table has a lot of columns and they're sometimes quite lengthy. So another benefit of the Excel, besides showing you the results that you're seeing on screen, we're going to take a look at the column header. So go ahead, when you're ready to get that output, click the Excel button and then click the file in the lower left. Now this Excel option is going to have a couple of tabs, information and data. Data is the tab that you're probably most interested in, so go ahead and click data. It's very similar to what we saw on screen. It even captures the customization we made to remove the years 2018, 19, and 20. And notice that this file format also offers the option for you, as you scroll right and left, to very easily view the full labels for what this particular table contains. So I wanted to point this out both as a way to save your results and as a way to help further and easily explore the layout of the tables themselves. Great, wanted to show you another way to save your results. It is the zip file format. So Excel is when you want to read and digest the information. Zip file format is if you want the information to be machine readable. You'll click that zip button at the top of the table and then choose download.csv in the pop-up window. In the lower left, you'll see that zip file if you're using Chrome. And then within that, you'll see 3 sets of files. The one you want ends in data.csv. It just means that it has the data and the corresponding labels all in one place. But notice this is pretty similar in terms of the overall layout of what we were seeing on screen. It's just meant to be machine readable. The other difference is that this file format does include flags that are by default hidden from the table view themselves. They are automatically included in the downloaded file if applicable. You'll see something other than null, but in many cases you'll likely just see null. Last thing about saving your results before we move on is the share button. So this is a relatively new button that we added to our tables and our maps. When you click share, you'll see options if you'd like to share this result on social media, if you'd like to share it by email. There's also a convenient link with a copy button at the bottom. So once you copy that link, access it later, or share it with a colleague, it's going to take you back to the same table with your geography and NAICS selections included. Right, we do want to leave time for questions. I have a few more items I'd like to review before we transition to your question. One popular economic data set we didn't get a chance to take a deep dive into today is the annual business survey. I did just want to mention, because it's so popular, we do have information on business and business owners, including the demographics of business owners broken out by sex, ethnicity, race, and veteran status. You can use the same strategy of selecting the survey filter. There is one for annual business survey, and this would get you to these data tables. We do hope in the future to provide a webinar specifically on this topic and accessing the data on data.census.gov. Another common tip for you is economic data tables can be very large. As you start adding more geography and NAICS codes, you could very easily run into this situation where you get a message that the table is too large to display. We recently added an option to try to open up these large tables anyway. So my advice to you is to look in the lower right-hand side. You may have to scroll to get to it, that link that says open the table, and go ahead and click on that to see if you will be able to view the table despite receiving this message. Another situation that you can run into quite easily for some of our data tables is this message that says data not available. So if you're getting this message, that's your indication most likely that you asked for too detailed of information. So what we would generally recommend are a few things. First, you'll want to look in the upper left. You'll want to apply a higher level NAICS code, so maybe a 2-digit NAICS code instead of a 4-digit NAICS code. You may want to apply a higher level geography, Pennsylvania, instead of a county in Pennsylvania. And then on the right-hand side, you may see this pop-up window showing if you've added any custom filters to the columns of your table. You may want to reconsider applying too detailed filters within the columns themselves. Right, let's talk about some resources now for learning more and ways to stay in touch. At data.census.gov, you'll see a feedback link under the single search bar. We invite you to let us know how we can make the site work better for you, and also reach out to us with your data questions. So once you click that link, it will allow you to send an email to us at census.data@census.gov. We also encourage you to sign up for email updates. When you visit the link on the left or scan the QR code, you can type in your email address, click data.census.gov updates, and that will subscribe you to notifications from us. This includes our monthly newsletter that will alert you to the latest educational resources, data releases, and system enhancements for data.census.gov. Part of these resources include our workshops. This is your opportunity to get hands-on practice. I hope that you learned a lot watching the demonstration. You'll have this resource to look back on and the slides made available to you. If you'd like to take a deeper dive, we have 3-hour workshops where you can get practice using our site with hands-on exercises, demonstration, plenty of time for Q&A. There are a number of different topics, basics, advanced, and mapping on data.census.gov. And we have 2 new workshops called the Microdata Access Tool Basics and Basics of Using the Census API. We encourage you to join these workshops to learn more about our resources. And one thing I also wanted to mention, what we focused on today is how to access the data that have been tabulated from the data collection. So our first example showed a table from the 2017 economic census. I did want to take a brief moment to note that data collection for the 2022 economic census is currently underway. So this means that we sent out letters on January 31st to businesses to respond to the economic census. If you received this on behalf of your business, the deadline to respond is March 15th, 2023. And we do appreciate your response. It's very important so that we can have the data that we discussed today. Again, there isn't any tabulated 2022 economic census data on data.census.gov yet, but we do appreciate your response. If you received one of these letters, there is help options for you. You can get help responding to the survey by visiting portal.census.gov and by calling the number 1-800-584-9066. Again, we appreciate your response. With that, we'd like to go ahead and transition over to Deb as we start looking forward to your questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Tyson. So as Tyson said, in just a few moments, we will begin our question and answer session. And today we will be taking your questions over the WebEx audio. So if you want to queue up and ask a question, go ahead and use the raise hand icon. Again, that's located right next to your name or perhaps at the bottom center of the WebEx screen. And that will prompt us to open up your line. You will then be able to unmute yourself and ask your question. And if you'd like to, you can begin queuing up now. But as always, I would like to first invite you all to give us your thoughts on today's webinar through an evaluation survey. You can tell us if you found today's webinar valuable, what you liked about it, if you didn't like something about it, where we can improve, and perhaps even other topics that you would like to have us cover in the future. We definitely pay attention to what you all have to say. So I am sending that link in the chat right now, so it should be available to everybody. So please take a moment to fill it out. You can listen to the Q&A as you fill it out. But if you have any questions remaining after our session concludes today, please feel free to reach out to one of the 2 email inboxes that are listed here. If you are a member of the public, please reach out to the Center for Enterprise Dissemination at census.data@census.gov, and members of the media can contact the Public Information Office at pio@census.gov. So with that, we can go ahead and transition over to the question and answer session, and I do see we already have somebody in the queue, so we will go ahead and unmute Glenda's line.
Thank you. That was just excellent, Tyson. Thank you. And I just want a clarification. When you were doing the table data with the Tennessee Health, then you switched over to map. It looked like to me, unless I missed something, that you had to reset the filters. Is there a way to synchronize the filters if you want to toggle back and forth between table and map view?
Great, thank you for your question. So the only filter selection that I think you're referencing that didn't carry over to the map was the NAICS selection. The geography selection filter that I had already chose carried over.
Yeah.
I clicked the map and it automatically pulled up counties. It zoomed me in Tennessee. The NAICS filter and the drop-down menu in the map are designed a little bit separately. So currently, no, you have to choose those individually. Part of the reason for this is that in my example, I only showed one option to select a NAICS, so I only selected 62, but I could have selected multiple NAICS for that table, and the system wouldn't necessarily know which one I would want the map of anyways. So it does give you the flexibility in the drop-down menu, but we would certainly convey your feedback to our development team that it would be helpful for that to be conveyed automatically. As of now, the way the system was designed, and you're not missing anything. So do be mindful of double checking that.
Great, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Let me see if we have any other questions in the queue. Doesn't look like we have, oh, I apologize. We do have a question. We will unmute Robert's line.
Yeah, I really like the map visualizations. Is there any way to capture those maps to republish someplace else?
Thank you for the question. So right now, there's not a way to capture the image itself. What we recommend if you want an image of the map is to use your screen capture software on your computer is the best option that is available. You could also try pressing Control P. We haven't officially designed that to make our maps printable, but the output that it does provide automatically may get you by for what you need, but really the best is to take a screenshot of it. Other than that, the share button that I showed, if you wanted to share the map on social media or a link, it is an option, but I think you're wanting an actual image, so I would recommend the screen capture. And we would take your feedback as well and pass that along to the team that you would like, maybe being able to download it or have some other way to share the image.
Very good, thank you.
Great, thank you for your question. We will go ahead and unmute Fanny's line, please.
Yeah, my question is just really quick. Wondering when you were going to drop the slides and the audio in the Data Academy portal?
Sure, I can answer that question. Typically, it takes us approximately 5 business days to be able to release the information. So we expect to have it probably sometime by the end of next week, I would say.
Okay,
but I'm happy to share a link, and you can go ahead and bookmark it if you'd like for future reference.
Yeah, that would really be great. Yeah, thank you so much.
Great, I will send that through the chat. Thank you for your question.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we can go ahead and unmute Edgar's line, please.
So regarding the API, does the API work with Postman, or do we just access it with all data?
Could you repeat your question, please?
For the API, do we need to use Postman, or can we use all data without Postman for the Census API?
I'm sorry, I'm not certain part of what you're referencing in your question. As far as data vintage availability for the API, you would see everything that is available on data.census.gov in terms of data sets and years, but the API does have additional data sets that aren't on data.census.gov, and it sometimes has more historical information. I don't know if that answers your question exactly, but if you have any follow-up, I would invite you to write in your question for us and we can research it more in depth for you. And that would be the census.data@census.gov.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Edgar. All right, you can go ahead and unmute Praveen's line, please.
So just wanted to see if you have like a username password or like some sort of an exposed endpoint.
I heard the tail end of your question before you were fully live. Can you repeat it?
Oh, I see. Sorry for that. So, hey, thank you guys for organizing this wonderful training session. This is really valuable. So I'm a developer, and I want to be able to access this data by pulling it into my own computer and working on it, right? So just wanted to see if you guys have like a endpoint, like an API endpoint with like a username password or something, right? Like, can I sign up for that?
Got it. Yeah. So 2 things. One, I want to reiterate that I would encourage you to visit our workshop, Basics of Using the Census API. But to answer your question on a high level, you can go to api.census.gov. And I will just show you where the data sets are. If you click on Discovery Tool or Available APIs, the tool's going to give you a machine readable listing. Available APIs will kind of let you browse through the data sets in a more human readable format. So either way is eventually going to get you to the data that you need. The Discovery tool is available in HTML, XML, and JSON formats. And if you click the HTML option is where you'll see there are many endpoints depending on the data set that you're interested in and the vintage. So the endpoints are on the right-hand side, the API base URL, and there are 1,321 total data sets that you can access. So I hope that gets you started. In terms of do you need a username or password, it's only if you're making a large number of requests. So if you're making more than 500 requests to our API for data per IP address per day, you would have to sign up for a free API key. And when you go to api.census.gov on the left, you'll see that request a key. Otherwise, if you're not exceeding that limitation, you don't need to sign up for a key. A key is free and associated primarily with your email address. And thank you for your question. I'm happy to hear about all the interest in the data and in our API.
Yes, thank you so much for your question. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions in the queue, Tyson, but we have a couple of minutes. I'm wondering if maybe we did receive a question in the chat that perhaps you can answer for everyone's benefit. So the question reads, can you narrow down your search by county or town or city in geography instead of getting all U.S. grocery stores?
Yes, I'm going to take a moment here to go back to the site. There are certainly other ways to narrow down your geography. And one of the tips I had mentioned was when you had selected a NAICS code first. I'm not going to go ahead and go through all the clicks to select the grocery store one, but I'm just going to select a random one. When you click geography and summary levels, this is telling you the list of geographic levels you can choose. So I think county was mentioned. We showed that in one of our examples. I think you mentioned metro area, that's metropolitan statistical area, micropolitan statistical area, and I believe you mentioned place. When you're accessing data from economic data sets, you want to be sure to choose what's called economic place. The standard place geography is for demographic data. Economic place are places for economic and business tables. So I hope that gives you some insight on where you might want to go to make those selections. You can also try typing your geography of interest in the single search bar.
Great, thank you so much, Tyson. Really appreciate you answering that. We don't have any additional questions, so I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you. But thanks everyone for all of the wonderful questions. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. So as we wrap up, wanted to talk about ways to stay connected with us. Again, we had given you our email addresses, census.data@census.gov. If you'd like to request a training specifically on data.census.gov or the API, you may also reach out to us at ced.cedsci.outreach@census.gov. And in addition to that, we wanted to promote our resources page. So when you click the help button on the landing page of data.census.gov, you'll be able to access educational resources, recorded webinars, the workshops, how-to materials, answers to your FAQs, and much more. Please take advantage of those resources. Another helpful resource at the Census Bureau is our data dissemination and training staff. They are the folks hosting this webinar via census.gov/academy. Not only do they host that centralized training hub for the Census Bureau, they're also locally available to you throughout the country. So there is a staff member assigned to your state if you'd like to request a training in general across any topic at the Census Bureau. They're a great resource for you to start with, and you can reach them at census.askdata@census.gov or 1-844-ASK-DATA. Thank you so much for joining the webinar. We hope you stay in touch, and we hope you join a future webinar. Thank you so much.
This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation. You may disconnect at this time.